to take some time to provide you with some inspiration and some resources as we start this current phase of church family. Now, as you all know, the church has never been about the building. The church is always about the people and the life that we live together, but of course it looks different because of COVID. And as we have re-entered the physical church, we will have to make decisions about how church is going to look. Each region is going to have to figure that out. And last year when we went to 100% online, there was a moment where I was like, are we going to have church again? Like, what does it look like to be a disciple now that we can't go? What's my family dynamic going to look like? And of course, it didn't take me long, thankfully, okay, I am a disciple. I can very much live that out. I can be wise in how I act towards people. I don't have to live in fear. God will still use my family and help those that are hurting. He will still use our church to help people become Christians. And I believe that very much happened this last year. This past year, almost felt like going to another country where you've never been. No one's ever gone. Nobody's ever been invited to. And there was nothing written about it. You can't Google it. There's no roadmap for it. There's no strategy. There are no books. And so we really hope to help you navigate through these roads as we are also navigating them as well. Where do we go from here? I came across this Bible study from Ministry Spark, and it's a resource that provides kids curriculum. I scoured the internet, guys, really looking for what we could do with our kids. And I would get excited from time to time, but then felt like, this isn't going to really fit. But then I saw this Bible study on Ezra and Nehemiah, and the people had been moved into exile, and they were away from their community, away from, what they knew. And in some situations, they had been removed from everything that they had known and felt similar, right? And so the beautiful part of Ezra and Nehemiah is that these exiles they get to go home, and when they're returning to this place, there's this, their place of worship where God had stood, like it's no there anymore. And as they return, they begin to rebuild the foundation of the temple. The people celebrate and praise God as they remember his faithfulness to them. But there's also this other aspect of the older generation that's returned, and the ones who knew Solomon's temple, they're now looking at this new temple, and it doesn't look the same, and it doesn't hold the same grandeur, and it doesn't hold the same meaning that the original one did, and they're struggling. And that's true for us too. I think some are excited coming back, and some are struggling, and we were just launching Revision 2020, right? And COVID hit. And so we're in the midst of really trying to figure out what we like about church, what we don't like about it. And then, we're trying to keep in mind that, we don't want to necessarily go back to everything that we were doing. And so we need to reset expectations while also being sure that we are staying true to God's mission and core values. And I imagine we will be reevaluating often. So one thing we are not going back to at this time is our traditional Kids Kingdom as we know it. I do want to thank Becky Stickler and all the regional coordinators. The classrooms the church was able to provide it was so amazing. And kids loved going to Kids Kingdom, and even our friends visiting church for the first time would always comment on how great our classes were. Right now, we are taking a different approach to Kids Kingdom, and it will be regional based. We simply can't recreate what we were doing prior, but that's okay. So each region will have to work out the specifics, but church can't be the primary place your kids are getting taught about God. We will partner with you though. We love your kids. They are so important to us. But as we saw this last year, it has to be a part of the family rhythm to talk about and to worship God together. Right now in KidsApp, we are working out essentially to have like a co-op when it comes to Kids Kingdom. So if you want your kids in, you can volunteer. But there isn't a curriculum, so it makes it easier to volunteer. Right now, we are reading through the Action Bible and doing a short devotional together after. And then we spend the rest of the time playing together and helping to foster great relationships in the church. So the reason why we have gone this way is because it's been really hard to know who's going to be at church in any given Sunday. We want people to stay home if they don't feel good. And then that just makes it really hard to run rotation like we normally would with teachers. And so we also know that teaching isn't for everyone. So to have a full-blown lesson is daunting and can lead, at least it's daunting for me, and then it can lead people just to get burnt out. And we really want to keep it as simple as possible. So the main focus really is just God and relationships. So now I have Kyle, who he made a video, and he's going to share some thoughts that's geared through middle school and high school, but honestly, it's applicable to all of us. So here's Kyle.
What's up, everybody? I want to talk about parenting teens and preteens, high school, middle school. We want to talk about this critical age range. My wife and I have a almost 16-year-old son and about to be 14-year-old daughter in the next month here. And we have a combined 20 years of experience serving youth and family teen ministries, both here and in the Phoenix church. And we just want to share a couple things with you all about parenting teens that we think are important while we're on this topic of parenting as a whole. Navigating this period of life with faith, first of all, that is the parent of a teen or preteen, is one of the hardest spiritual challenges you will take on. So give yourself a gold star just for being here, for being interested in continued growth as a parent and as a child of God. Before I get into deeper topics, here's a quick announcement. Please, we're asking parents of the high school age kids, 9th through 12th grade, going into 9th through 12th grade this summer, to keep June 12th free on their calendars in the afternoon, evening. We're still working out place and exact time. There's a critical meeting as we get ready to relaunch high school ministry activities and really chart out the next chapter of the high school ministry. We want to get things moving forward again and meeting in person again as the state is opening and we're moving on. I want to quickly talk about 3 areas of parenting that are critical. But first, I just want to make it really clear how critical parenting teens actually is. I mean, parenting matters so much, and maybe even more so in the teen years than any other years. You may think you've lost your influence, they've got their friends, and they don't care about your value system or your way of doing things or your thoughts. This couldn't be more mistaken and misguided. So much research is out there and expert advice and opinion about how much teens are still shaped by their parents and how big of an influence their parents still are, more so than any other aspect of their lives. You may think it's their friends, you may think it's the broader culture, but it's not. It's still you. It's still us. When we attended a youth and family conference in Denver several years ago, we heard Phil Arsenault talk, a longtime youth and family expert in the church, and he said that parents have 3 to 4 times more influence than the church on healthy outcomes in teens and preteens. It's such a critical dynamic. Parenting matters, and it's the first and most important aspect to address when we talk about parenting teens, because so many of us can get fooled into thinking it doesn't matter when it really does. It's so important. How we speak to our teens, whether we invest time in them still, whether they can share what's on their heart with us, whether we can listen without reacting, all of it matters a great deal. Let's look at a couple scriptures. In Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 through 7. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Ephesians 6:4 says, Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training, instruction of the Lord. This responsibility, it falls on us. It falls on us as parents. 3 areas to talk about real quick. Number 1, influence versus authority-based relationships. Influence versus authority-based relationships with our teens and preteens. Around middle school, and really it's individual teen dependent, but around middle school, many of our teens, preteens start start to develop their own sense of autonomy, and our ability to make them do things goes down dramatically. It starts in that period. Now, some will outwardly rebel and reject that, and some will do so more inwardly, and they'll bide their time, and it won't come out until later. But the ability to parent purely from authority becomes more and more challenging around that middle school period. And there's there's this concept of moving the relationship to one that is more influence-based than authority. How do you do that? Number one, recognizing that the shift will take place, that it's natural, it's healthy, in fact, for that to take place. And number two, realizing that your influence is a function of the relationship and the quality of relationship and friendship you have with your teen. In the book Owning Faith, which is a great read, by the way, Dave Pakta wrote a quote here: "Our real influence on our teenagers is only as strong as the respect and love they feel from us." So that's huge. When we when John Louis, who wrote the book Good Enough Parenting, John and Karen Louis, and we attended the training, he talked to us about this idea quality time takes time, and he talked about spending weekly time with our kids, regardless of what age they are, but as teenagers, continuing to spend weekly time. He said he was very pointed and emphatic, and really had he was very hard line around the idea of, look, if you don't have time to spend with your teens on a regular basis, to make time, whatever that means, work fewer hours at work, get a different job, change your finance, the structure of finance, whatever it means. If you don't have time, make time to spend time with your kids. And that includes the teenagers. I want to say especially the teenage years, because it's such a critical time period. They're all important, but it's really critical. When we were in Phoenix, we would hear from teens who'd gone on and successfully to campus ministry, as disciples and faithful, and come back, and they would talk to the teen ministry, the teen workers and parents about, what was key for them, right? And one of the things we felt, or one of the things we heard from every one of their stories, and we continue to hear it from stories of teens who've gone on to continue in their faith, is they will share that in some way, somehow, they will say, I felt like I could tell my dad or my mom anything. And it really takes intentionality to develop that kind of relationship with our teens. And it takes moving from authoritarian to influence. It also takes the number two thing I want to talk about, which is communication. It takes being like Christ in our communication. Not just the words we use, but the tone, the facial expressions, our body language. Our words, when our teens blow it, make a mistake, our words can express concern for a mistake that was made, but our tone can be saying, you are a total failure. How could you screw this up again? The more we communicate with our teens from an overly emotional and hostile place, the more we actually block their ability to have healthy development, whether that's spiritually or even just brain development. There's research that's gone into that kind of communication, blocking development of the prefrontal cortex, blocking some of the very things that we're want most, right? We want to see our teens develop that healthy, good judgment, long-term thinking, and we can be their own worst enemy and our own worst enemy in those goals by not learning how to communicate in a loving way, even when we're feeling triggered, even when we are feeling really, really out of it emotionally, based on what's going on. There's so many good resources on how to be more loving in communication. One of the books that helped me with that was the book Nonviolent Communication. I know a few of you in the church have taken a look at that, and it's written not from a spiritual perspective, but it's about non-hostile communication and the skills that are involved with that. And it takes intentional work for us to get there. Another big aspect of communication is vulnerability. One of the main hang-ups teens have when it comes to pursuing faith and pursuing Christianity is feeling like the bar is too high, like it's unachievable. And this is sad because, as parents, we all know our past, we all know our current lives and how we continue to blow it. And yet, are we revealing that to our teens, right? Are we sharing from a place of vulnerability about how we still struggle? Vulnerability breeds vulnerability. And it can be a major stumbling block for teens studying the Bible or wanting to become Christians. It's just feeling like they are just too imperfect. And what a shame for that to be a stumbling block when we can break through that with our own vulnerability. When we can show that you don't have to have it all together. That's not what it's about. But that takes us being intentional and vulnerable and communicating, going out of our way to communicate that and taking time in maybe those special times to just share what we're struggling with. What are our battles? What are the things they can pray for us about, right? And the last thing I'll say about that is modeling that communication in your marriage is super important. You're going to have a hard time really modeling that as a parent and sort of doing a great job in communication with your teen if it's not happening in your marriage. It would almost be better to be a single parent raising teens than in a marriage where verbal abuse is taking place and out of control hostile communication is going on. It puts some real stumbling blocks to attempting to reach your teens. And lastly, the third thing here is just intentional spiritual training. In the book Owning Faith, and also in the chapter on Disciples Learn from Disciples by Dave Pakta, again, he writes, "What I'm saying is that youth ministry shouldn't be a crutch or an escape for parents. How do I know that it often becomes just that? When parents accuse the church of not doing enough, when they have a drop-off and dash mentality about teen events and functions, when parents leave spiritual development up to the church instead of owning it themselves." We have to take on, as parents, the primary responsibility of teaching our children how to pray. The primary responsibility, teaching them how to read the Bible, how to follow the Bible, how to walk with God, how to be in church, how to have friends, how to date, how to fill in the blank. There's no other alternative. It's awesome when other adults get involved, other parents get involved. There's mentoring relationships. The teen ministry is functioning as it should. But we have to be the primary responsibility of teaching and training our children, our teens, and other adults and other parts of the church can supplement, but we got to go after it ourselves and make it happen. And lastly, I'll say is just there's so much in here that could be said, and there's so much in here that is it depends and maybe and gray area. That this getting help with parenting with teens is just it's like the perfect topic that begs for getting advice, asking spiritual people around you, asking the elders, the Walshes, Chanel's, Perkins, asking other teen parents like the Ships, who are have some experience and have some thoughts. I couldn't imagine going through this journey without people I can ask and get help from. There's so much that I'm still trying to figure out and learn and ask and so it's a great opportunity to do that, and God will bless it. God will reward it. So
Okay, so lastly, I just wanted to point you to our website, southsoundcoc.org, the Kids Corner tab. It has past videos, it has worship videos, it has resources, it has devotionals, it has book recommendations. Everything is there. If you have something to add to that list, I would love to hear your recommendations, things that you've been using. Really, this is about just inspiring each other to keep going forward and to keep this rhythm, this family rhythm of where we really worship and serve God together. I think it's really easy to compartmentalize our faith, and that, like I have my quiet time and I go off into a room or I go and pray alone, but then our kids don't see this relationship that we have with God, and so just what we each one another is doing, if we can share that with each other to help inspire one another just to keep going. I think I need it. I need it so much, and I imagine if I need it, you need it as well, so that we can really be helping one another. So thanks for listening. Bye.